Lance Hall here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. Happy to welcome Andrew Hagar to the program tonight. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for making some time for me.
I appreciate you taking the time to do it. You
Of
have a
course.
ton of projects going on right now.
Yes, I do.
You're a busy man.
Yes,
Uh,
sir, I am.
we'll start off with what led off the email from Shauna, and that's the Family Legacy program on Paramount Plus,
Yep.
which I was able to watch on YouTube. Uh, that looked like it was a lot of fun to make.
Definitely a lot of fun to make. That was about 6 or 7 hours of interviews. I did maybe 1 hour with my pops and then the rest just solo. Got to see a lot of really cool footage from back in the day on MTV and share some really fun stories. So I think it turned out pretty well. They did a good job with portraying our relationship and just, goofing off and stuff. So it was really fun.
Who do you think had more fun with it, you or your pops, though?
I think he was kind of dealing with quite a bit of other things that day, so he was
Okay.
just in and out. So I definitely had more fun than he did. Yeah.
Definitely some moments in there where he was kind of like, "Whoa, wow," look at
Mhm.
that.
For
Which which
sure.
which has got to be cool to be able to share that legacy with and that heritage and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the show did a really good job of showing, some of the big defining moments of his career on MTV, the VMAs, and all this other stuff. So I'm sure for him, like, I mean, he's had so many, tremendous successes in his life. It was probably really fun to just be able to visualize some of the things that I'm sure he hadn't thought about in a really long time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And now you've got an EP that's coming out or has come out.
That's coming out. I've had a lot of different projects over the course of my musical career. This is going to be the first EP that I've dropped under my own name, and that's going to be coming out most likely in June.
Okay. And this is limited edition Psycho, correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about that title. I like that.
I thought it was funny because a lot of people, we all have mental health issues these days. We all have all kinds of things we're dealing with, especially through the pandemic and post pandemic. And I wrote all these songs with my friend Trev Lukather over the course of the pandemic when we were all just kind of in the midst of it and going through it. And everybody feels like their problems are uniquely their own. But when you start talking about it openly, you realize that we all kind of have similar issues, if not the same issues. So limited edition Psycho is just kind of a word play on that idea that everybody thinks they're unique in their issues, but we're really not. So
Yeah, definitely. But the more you get out there and share it, definitely the more people heal with everything as well. And I've talked
absolutely.
to a number of people who say, it's good to share and it's good for people to realize this. And the best thing to know is sometimes it's okay not to be okay as well, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's I'm happy that we're living in a transition time when more people and more men especially are dropping the stigma and starting to really be open with their issues and talk about therapy and all the mental health struggles they go through. I try to use any opportunity I get to talk about stuff to bring up that point and bring up some of my own experiences with it too, just because, again, I'd like to see the conversation become a little bit more normal.
Yeah, definitely. I'm embarrassed as shit here, Andrew, because this is leading into a question. The video and the song was featured in Family Legacy, and
Mhm.
I thought I had written the title down. It's Red Light.
Red light appetite.
Okay, all right, yeah. I pride myself on prep, but I remember reading the backstory. That song deals with some things that you went through.
Yeah, that song deals with the idea of addiction. It deals with toxic relationships and the line kind of between love, obsession, and addiction.
And that video looked like it was pretty cool to make as well.
It was a lot of fun. I had some good friends that were involved. We kind of made it on short notice. I had a whole other thing planned out that didn't really pan out, and my really good friend Chris Profera out there in Austin, Texas, put together some friends of his, Tyler, and all the great people with his production crew, and we went out there and rented out this little ghost town they use for filming shows like Westworld and whatnot, just for a few hours in the evening. invited my good friend Lexi out. And yeah, we just had a really, really fun time. I had an idea for doing sort of like a B movie ish, like From Dusk Till Dawn with
Yeah.
cowboys thing. And I think that's exactly how it turned out. So we had a good time with it. It was like really schlocky and fun and just kind of like the B horror movies that I really enjoyed growing up, you know?
That's cool. What would be one of your favorite B horror movies from back in the day?
Oh man, my favorite of all time is probably Evil Dead 2. I
Okay.
think that strikes a great balance between the more traditional horror angle of the first Evil Dead and then the just super slapstick kind of comedy horror vibe of Army of Darkness. So yeah, Evil Dead 2 is probably one of my favorites. And then my favorite like horror movie of all time is The Thing. I love The Thing. It really nails the cosmic horror vibe, the creeping dread, which is very difficult to do outside of literature.
Yeah. Cool. 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 And that song, I gotta tell you, has a heavy freaking groove.
Yes, it
Um,
does.
to me, it reminded me of the same type of groove that's in like Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood. That's a
Oh yeah,
song that's just, it's heavy, but it grooves, it's got a melody. And I remember
definitely.
reading an interview with Janet Jackson saying, that song, she wanted to dance to it,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
I
got that
hope.
melodic part into it.
Right. I hope this stuff inspires that same kind of vibe in people that they want to kind of move to it. It's really fun to play. It's fun to perform. It's obviously fun to listen to, and yeah, that's something that Trev Lukather, my co-writer and producer on all these songs, is very well versed in that groove. He's learned a
Yeah,
lot from his dad, Steve Lukather, and Toto,
yeah,
and he's paid attention to a lot of really great kind of stadium rock and anthemic rock projects over the years. And I think that's reflected in his production style. So
yeah.
it's really fun stuff.
Now, when it comes to making music, I read you were like 24, 25. There was a girl that bought an acoustic guitar for you.
Yeah, yeah. Someone I was in a relationship with at the time, I was working a job at EA Games for a while, and like we had some of these, company wide tournaments and stuff. I was playing like a lot of Guitar Hero at the time, and my friends were just roasting me. They're like, "Dude, why don't you just get a real guitar?" So this girl that I was dating at the time just bought me a cheap acoustic guitar, and I started teaching myself on YouTube essentially how to play guitar. And yeah, then I started jamming with my friends a little bit more often. I had played music prior, but in school I played like drums and a couple other instruments, dabbled around on bass, learned how to sing in choir and whatnot. But I didn't really start taking it a little more serious in my pursuits until my 20s. And then I started kind of writing songs and just messing around with some of my buddies in a punk project and whatnot. But I didn't really start, you know, getting more invested into it until like 2012. And then obviously 2016 was when I started touring. But
Yeah.
yeah, music's always been a really big part of my life.
You brought up an interesting thing with teaching yourself through YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading another interview you did where you were talking about your pops, back in the day, and I'm from his generation as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you bought an album, you sat down, with headphones on, you tried
Yep.
to figure out, I'm thinking like Kirk Hammett when he was trying to figure out all the Michael Schenker licks and everything.
Oh
It was
yeah.
trial and error. You didn't have YouTube to
Nope.
learn all that from.
Right.
Today is so wide open. Do you think like some of the mystique is gone now? I mean, I could never imagine sitting down like I am with you right now and saying, Mr. Page, this new song Stairway to Heaven, it's really, really, there was that
Yeah,
mystique
absolutely.
back then. Do you
Yes. I completely agree with you. One of my, I don't want to say biggest gripes, but maybe that is what I'm trying to say. One of my biggest gripes with the current music industry is that, you know, people expect, it's not just that it's there, people expect unfettered access to their favorite artists. They want to know every little thing about them, including what they ate for breakfast. And at this point, like that conversation, I guess is kind of tired. We're already past that. We're
Right.
deep into the throes of TikTok and the next generation of social media apps and all this stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I miss that growing up. I grew up kind of in between eras from your era and the new era of social media.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't, we didn't have the iPhone even until I graduated from college. So
Right.
it's been a bit difficult for me to adjust to this because I am a fairly private person. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure if you take a look at my social media, you'd see I'm just kind of a goofball, and I just lean into that, uh, being very authentic with what I post on social media. I'm not really trying to please anybody out there. I know a lot of people are chasing trends on TikTok and whatnot, but I just don't really have a taste for that.
Yeah.
To you know, to the dismay of all the labels and industry people I've tried to court over the years, that's the one thing everyone wants more of, is just activity on social media. But yeah, going back to your original point, I think there was something really beautiful about having to sit there with a record and learn it by ear and through trial and error. And when I'm trying to learn stuff, typically I will do that to a certain point. And then if there's something that I'm really struggling with, it's nice to be able to go online and see somebody do it on YouTube or see a tab that somebody's put up. And I think that's a really beautiful part about, just the internet in general, is being able to find information if you want to find it.
Yeah.
Obviously, that gets into a whole other thing with fake news and false narratives and just general media literacy, but that's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it can just so overtake your whole life that you're not living your life. You're putting it all online, and you're not living.
Absolutely.
It drives
Yeah,
me
and
nuts.
it drives me nuts too. You see people that do a lot of stuff performatively. Obviously, there's a lot of big social media influencers out there that, whatever, they'll go bring a meal to somebody that's homeless and like record the whole thing. And I kind of wonder what's happening, before and after that, if there's a conversation they're having or whatnot. It's just very difficult to trust that anything you see online is really true, and what the true intentions of it are now,
Yeah.
which is, a little disappointing, but what
You
can you do?
nailed it. You nailed it, because you see pictures of like people on vacation. It looks so idyllic, and
Oh,
it's you don't hear about the fight afterwards, or the
nope.
argument in the car about because the driver took the wrong directions. It's
Exactly.
everybody's programmed to think, oh, everything's idyllic. So
Absolutely. And that type of programming brings me to the next point, which is I've got a new single coming out on May 5th, this Friday, called Systematic Minds. And
yeah,
that is essentially what the entire song is about, that weird systemic ideology that we all kind of find ourselves adhering to, most likely kind of without our consent or our knowledge.
mm, yeah, great. I
Yeah.
I was reading about that. I love the story on that. I can't wait to hear the song, and yeah, gonna be great. Talk a little bit about the band you've got with you right now. I hear you got, everybody's a solid hang, I think I heard you describe them as. Talk a little bit
Absolutely.
about who you got with you.
Well, first of all, it all starts with my guitar player, Joey Ariema. He's a guy that I've worked with before in a writing and production capacity as well. Before the pandemic started, I was doing a lot of co-writes with people in LA as kind of like a lyric guy, ghostwriting for other artists and stuff. And Joey was a producer, songwriter, guitar player. And we had met years before through a former tour manager, my father's, Mark Litton, great guy, based out, I think, Cincinnati. And Joey and I hit it off like super fast. We became really good friends and started hanging out, writing together. He's got a really sharp mind. He's a wonderful guy. Loves philosophy and stoicism. Same with me. So we just gelled on so many levels. And he actually produced and co-wrote Judgment Day and Cold Knife Karma, two of my previous singles from years ago. And yeah, he's now my guitar player. I love it. He brought in his good friend Greg Cash, who's a fantastic songwriter, session bass player, hired gun guy. And we became really good friends like super fast. He looks like an extra on like Sons of Anarchy or something. The guy's the sweetest guy though. Like, he
Yeah.
looks like Zach Wild or something. You might think like he's got kind of an edge to him, but honestly, he's just the best guy. And he brought in his friend Devin Lebsack, who's also known as the Sack, and he's our drummer. Devin's amazing, one of the most reliable guys out there, just super sweet as can be, and has cut his teeth over the last few decades playing with some of the biggest and coolest like classic metal bands out there. So together, the four of us are now like the Midnight Suns, and we have a great time out there on the road. There's a million amazing musicians out there,
Mm.
and you can get whatever, an incredible guitar player who's just a shitty human being. And when you're out there on the road, whether you're in a van or a bus or a station wagon, it gets really tough. So you got to make sure that the people you're with are reliable, dependable, but most importantly, just really fun to hang out with.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's kind of like a marriage, when you get right down to it. Yeah.
absolutely. It's tough to find the right one, shall we
Yeah.
say.
Now,
Yeah.
before this, you got your start. Your start kind of fascinated me over there in Scotland. You were dating Kelly Christopherson out with Chris Christopherson. They got you out on a stage in Edinburgh at Queen's Hall.
Yep.
So, in the beginning, is it safe to say you were almost like I tried to look up this word to make sure I'm using it right. You were a bit of a troubadour. It was just you with a
Yeah.
guitar singing songs?
Yes, sir. That's my first few years of touring. I was playing with Kelly, and then after that fizzled out. I was playing solo acoustic, and I was doing more of a, I guess, like a Bob Dylan-esque
Yeah.
live thing where it was just me with a guitar and a harmonica and sometimes a tambourine on my foot, and I was just doing it. And that was really cool. I mean, being out there performing that way in front of large audiences who absolutely were not there to see that kind of act, it allowed me to cut my teeth in a really unique way because every night I had to prove myself to these people. And, you know, I mean, I think I did a pretty admirable job at the end of the day because, again, a lot of those shows I was like fighting the audience's expectation first of all, but second of all, like these people were not there to see like a folk acoustic singer songwriter act, So it was really good. It was a very instrumental part of my formative performance experience.
What was it like standing on stage with the Outlaws? And I'm not talking the Southern group, the Outlaws. I'm talking the Outlaws. Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and Willie Nelson.
Oh yeah.
What you must have been shitting yourself. you know?
Yeah, I mean the whole first year that I toured in 2016 was kind of just like a dream, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Central California, adjacent to a lot of agriculture and ranch activity. Did a little bit of that stuff myself growing up. My mother was a huge, outlaw country folk Americana artist. So I grew up, with the sounds of Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, definitely Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, all these people, pumping through the house. And to get up there on stage with Chris Christopherson night after night and, sing harmony with him on a lot of tunes and, play iconic venues like and iconic festivals like the Newport Folk Fest. I mean,
Yeah.
that's still to this day probably one of the biggest highs I've ever experienced as a musician in my career. I mean, it was so cool. And like I said, I've said this in interviews before, like I owe everything to the Christophersons because without the opportunities and knowledge that they presented me with, I never would have even known that I wanted to play music. And now it's such a huge part of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. When it comes to songwriting, you talked about playing instruments and stuff and singing in school and then the guitar. And I read somewhere that you were a journal, you journaled a lot. You did a lot of
Mhm.
writing and stuff like that. Were you like big in English class in school as well?
Yeah, I won a few awards for creative writing and poetry and stuff, back in my lower and middle school days. And yeah, I later took to journalism early on in college. I was a journalist for like 10 years. I love writing and I always write every day in some capacity. A huge part of my own experience with mental health was like meditation and journaling and therapy. And just organizing your thoughts is so useful. But then when I get in the studio, I can then take those thoughts that are organized in my journal and kind of pull ideas from that for songs. And that's how this whole, EP, LP, limited edition Psycho kind of came to be. But just in general, yeah, I think that, the creative process is so interesting to me. I wish that there was a way to just kind of like turn the creativity on and off like a faucet.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it kind of comes when it wants to come.
right.
And it's always been so interesting how sometimes it's very difficult. You have an idea you want to work with that you're just, massaging to get it to the right place. It doesn't really feel right. And then all of a sudden, one little thing will click into place and everything clicks into place. And then oftentimes you have whatever, a weird dream, and you wake up with like a song fully formed in your mind. It's such a trip how this stuff happens. And yeah, I just, whether it's songs or stories or poetry, it's all just kind of a beautiful mystery to me.
Cool. So you're usually lyrics first, then music, or do you sometimes get the music first?
It just depends, you know. I mean, I think it's much harder to write lyrically first without the music because, you know, the cadence, the chords, the melody, they inform so much of what you can do lyrically. And obviously, I came from more of a lyrical background with poetry and traditional writing. So when I was first starting to write music, I would try to approach it with a lyrical idea first. And it was just so much more difficult that way. And
Yeah.
it's nice to have people like both my mother and my father are songwriters. So I can kind of bounce ideas off of them. And, you know, my dad would always tell me, find a way to say what you want to say with less words. Like that
Yeah.
was always the biggest problem for me was like
Yeah.
condensing everything, you know?
Right.
I'm getting better at it though.
Stepping away from music for just a moment, I read this about you and it fascinated me. You're a real sci-fi guy,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. Love
you
it.
mentioned something about, and I hope I can pronounce this right, theoretical physics and its relation to deja vu.
Oh yeah. Those are, I mean, man, yeah, I love quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people pushing back against the string theory community, saying that it's really not like useful stuff. But I was just sitting there one day and decided to spin out on all this stuff. This was man, quite a few years ago now, but yeah, I thought that if you look at things like spooky action at a distance, quantum entanglement, all these ideas, they have a way of explaining some of the strange natural phenomena that we experience.
Mm,
Like the idea that once you kind of intermingle particles, no matter how far away they are from one another, they always kind of move or act in relation to one another. And that was like, to me, like when you haven't seen someone that's a really good friend for a long time and you think about them, and then like a minute or two later, they call you, you know?
yeah.
Like there's got to be it's a romantic way of looking at things, but it's maybe there's something there. You know, I always
Yeah.
thought that the really interesting thing about quantum mechanics and theoretical physics especially is like it's kind of a way to marry science and aspects of spirituality or religion. And I
Mm,
think that when those two things, you know, become intertwined, you have a much fuller way of looking and engaging with the world.
yeah. I mean, I haven't had them in a while, but I had a moment of deja vu a while back that I was standing there with this girl at work, and it just came over me, and I started to get actually like dizzy, and I'm like,
Ooh.
I've done this before. I knew this was going to happen, you know. And
Yeah.
I talked to her about it afterwards. It really almost knocked me off my feet, and I had to finish what I was doing. I went back to her and I'm like, Kelly, that whole thing was just wild,
Wow.
wild. What was going on in my mind right then? I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was coming next. It was
That's
crazy.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Yeah, I love moments like that. Like all throughout my life, I'm kind of searching for the little moments of synchronicity, like just looking for this stuff as a way to navigate like my path through life. That's like to me, like you're keeping your fingers on the pulse of the universe, you know, and I just want to chase that all the time.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
absolutely. So going forward, we've got Systematic Minds coming out May 5th. You've got the EP, limited edition Psycho coming out hopefully in June.
Yep.
Live dates? Gonna be able to play
Yeah, I
live?
mean, we're working on some substantial stuff for the summer and later this year in the fall. We're, you know, working with different booking agents right now, just trying to see what's the best for us. It's difficult right now to tour as an independent artist. It's
Mm,
very expensive.
yeah.
And some of the stuff that people who aren't familiar with the touring industry don't really understand is like a lot of these big tours, what they call like buy-ons, where you essentially have to like pay to play. And even then, if you're not doing a buy-on as an independent artist, like if you don't have a van, like renting a van, if you're going to the East Coast to play and you live on the West Coast, it's like you got to rent equipment out there, or you got to drive all the way across America between, you know, gas costs and all this other stuff. It's pretty daunting to put together a tour. And I independently finance all of this stuff on my own. So I have to be very selective about what I choose to, you know, allocate my resources to. Because if I spend too much money on touring, then I can't, you know, do digital marketing for my releases and all this stuff. And it's just, yeah, it's a really tricky game to navigate being an independent artist.
And the big thing I'm hearing now is trying to find like crew, you know, people to
Oh
do
yeah.
sound. people to work the venue. And then you've got to have like
Yep.
insurance for all this stuff and everything. And a lot to it that people don't realize.
Exactly. There's so many things that go into playing even just a single show that people don't understand. It's like I always love seeing people like, comment on posts and be like, "Hey man, come to Cleveland. Hey, come to Florida." And it's like, I would love to. Like, are you kidding me? If I could, if I had,
Yeah.
millions of dollars in the bank and didn't mind spending all this money on stuff, I would be playing all over the place. I would just buy a tour bus and go out and play all the time. But the unfortunate reality of the situation is I'm not made of money, and until this thing starts kicking a little more, it's really difficult to justify doing these big extended tours. But I love it. I feel very at home on the road. I grew up on the road with my dad, and I can't wait to get out there and do a bit more substantial touring with the band, because I've never been on tour with a full band like this. I've only played one, two, three off shows. And man, it's just when you got guys like this that are just such rippers on stage and just such great people off stage, it's hard not to imagine the possibilities of doing a big tour, you know?
Yeah. Go out and turn them loose. Andrew, before we finish, I always like to ask silly questions. Hopefully, these are questions you've never been asked before. But I got to ask you a couple more before we get to that. Is
Yeah.
there anything we didn't touch on? Anything you didn't get to talk about? A question I didn't ask you that you feel like we didn't touch on?
No, I think, we covered most of the big stuff. We got the MTV's Family Legacy that just came out. Red Light Appetite is out there now uh, on radio stations. It's
Yeah.
getting a little more love on Spotify and stuff. That's great. And we have the new single coming out on May 5th, Systematic Minds. Yeah, I think we hit all the major bullet points.
The other question I've got to ask is, and I know you get asked this a lot. Everybody wants like an Eddie Van Halen story or something like that, or a
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
What if no one ever hears, or at least I never have, Alex Van Halen? Can you give
Oh,
me an
yeah.
Alex Van Halen story? I mean, he's like the mystery guy, you know?
He is the mystery guy. I always had a great time with Al. He was always really sweet with me and sweet with us and the family. I know Eddie and Al were big time, button heads all the time. A guy I knew very well for a while who did a music video for me, Andy Bennett. He has a great like coffee table photography book called Eruption in the Canyon that's got a lot of really funny stories and anecdotes from Eddie. He told me a crazy story one time about how Eddie and Al got into like almost a fist fight. Again, like this is all hearsay. I don't know if this actually happened. Uh, Andy Bennett had a lot of crazy stories, which I assume all of them are true because they all seemed very much within the realm of possibility. But Eddie and I were having like basically a knockdown argument out on the front lawn, wrestling, some, punches were thrown. And I guess, I don't know if it was Eddie or Al, but somebody got into a car and tried to drive away. So I'm guessing this was Al. And that would have meant that Eddie jumped on the front of the hood and was hanging on the windshield while Al was driving down the driveway. I don't know how fast they were going or what happened. Again, I
Right.
don't know if it's a true story, but that's just some crazy shit that I heard.
Oh God, that's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Silly questions. Favorite toy growing up as a child?
Oh man, my Ghostbusters proton pack for sure.
Awesome. If you could go back in time and eat one of your mom's home cooked meals from your childhood, what would you have her prepare?
Oh man, she used to make hamburger helper sometimes out on the ranch, and I just loved that so much.
Excellent. If you could pick a television show to have one of your songs placed in, what show would you pick?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh man, maybe Black Mirror.
Oh, yeah, great one. Great one.
Yeah.
What is a day off from music like for you? You're not gonna write lyrics, you're not gonna record music. What do you do like it for on a downtime from music? Or do
Downtime
you
from
have one?
music. Yeah, no, downtime from music. I mean, I'll make sure to get a good workout in. I will, have a nice little meditation, make some great food, and typically go for like a nice hike somewhere
Nice.
beautiful where I can probably see the ocean.
Nice. Favorite old school wrestler?
Favorite old school wrestler. Oh man, geez, there's so many good ones, but I gotta say my man Ric Flair.
Oh, yes. You I got you on that one. I idolize that guy. Have you ever met him?
I have never had the pleasure of having a sit down conversation with Ric Flair, and I would love to. One of
Yeah.
my really close friends, Bryce Yang, who works at 2K Games, he's managed the WWE franchise through several different game studios. He's really good friends with Rick, and he always keeps trying to put Rick and my dad together, and Stone Cold and my dad together. And I keep trying to get my dad to do it, and he's always so busy he can't make it happen. But
Oh, make it
Stoker's
happen.
yeah, make
Tell
it
him to
Stoker's
make
like
it
I want to
happy.
guys. Yeah.
If you were to have a walk-up music for any time you came into the room and were going, or what would be your walk-up song?
On my walk-up song? Oh
Yeah, your
man.
walk-up music. You're going to bat. You're playing baseball. You're going to bat, or you're coming out on the basketball court or something.
Oh man. A little tongue in cheek, maybe like Crockett's theme from Miami Vice or something.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. I got a feeling you might have been asked this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Seeing how your dad is who he is, fastest you've ever driven in a car.
Oh man. I don't know if I should say this on air. I've done some pretty reckless things as a kid, but yeah, I made it up to 118 in my car, which is not that crazy considering. No. But he's definitely driven, I think, close to 150 miles per hour before, if not more than that, in one of his crazy supercars. So that's not even touching anything close to what he's done. But yeah, excellent. Buck 20 was pretty wild.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's moving. That's moving. Yeah. Favorite topping for your pizza?
Oh man. I'm one of those crazy weirdos that I like actual bacon, pineapple, olives, green peppers, and red peppers all on a nice crispy pizza. That's just to me, I love it. The salty, the sweet, all those flavors together. People might want to crucify me for that, but it's all good. They don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Exactly. Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. Last one. This is the one we have the most fun with. If they were to make a biopic of your life, what actor would you choose to play you? And it's your movie, your life. You can pick anybody.
Oh man, I have no idea. When I was a little younger, people used to say I looked like Jake Gyllenhaal or vice versa. So maybe Jake Gyllenhaal. I have no idea.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
That works.
maybe Kit Harington, just because I love that guy so much. I don't know.
Yeah. Just to lead us back into the beginning of the interview and the whole family legacy program and everything, I'll ask you one more serious question.
Sure.
Best piece of advice your pop ever gave you?
Oh man, best piece of advice he ever gave me was more of just like a guideline. He said, "I don't care what you do with your life. You could be a garbage man for all I care, as long as you're happy and whatever you do brings you joy."
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Andrew, I thank you very, very much for the time. It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome. And wish you much success in the future. And once you get out there on the road, may your travels be safe and all your shows sold out.
Thank you so much, Lance. I really appreciate you.
All right. Take care, brother.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.